wildlife ambassador, that's the word I would use, a phrase to describe Georgia, has been doing some wonderful work on television and radio, wonderful work writing and supporting the work we do. It's a real pleasure to have her here today just to tell us about why as a young person she feels so passionately about wildlife and what the hope is for the future as a naturalist, someone who really cares and wants to make a difference. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I comment that the purpose of my hide and the observation woodland is largely to involve youngsters, and it's amazing how the behaviour, well, to quite one example, a lady said, "You can't stop him talking, I'm afraid he's terrible." And I said, "Well, they know my voice, but they don't know yours." So at the end, she said, "I've never known you so quiet."
Absolutely, it is wonderful. I think you're absolutely right. I appreciate how many young people go there and how over the years you've inspired generations of people. So thank you very much.
So yeah, so just to introduce, I've always had, since I can sort of remember, like a big, great fascination for nature and sort of what it consists of and stuff like that. So when I was growing up, I had family members that sort of had similar interests, and they introduced me to it all. And thinking back, some key things that I really remember that really no doubt really inspired me. So sort of like doing real simple things like feeding the birds in the garden, the occasional rare visitor, going to sort of like my favourite patches, outdoor areas, and then of course going down to the local badges set. It's just so it's still things that I do now and things that I've been doing since sort of as I can remember. And then as I sort of grew older, my interest for nature it developed too, and I branched out, and I was still really sort of interested and eager and learning and exploring other species, habitats, and more too, as well as getting involved in other ways. So more technical things, so my photography, getting involved with photography and capturing what I was seeing and recording and sharing that. And also my trail cameras too, which really inspired my interest and love for badgers. And I remember I got my first trail camera about 4 years ago now, and I remember setting up for the first time, and that was at the local badger set where I've watched the badgers for a long time. It's a set which I've known for like forever really, well, as long as I can remember. And we went to, we put out the night before, we watched for a bit, and we went to it the next morning. And I always say, when you're collecting your trail camera, whether it be the badgers here, the hedgehogs in the garden, or anything like that, it's all, you go and collect it. And I always say it's a bit like Christmas, because you don't know what you're going to get. It's like opening a present. No, anyway. And the first time, we got all the settings, I've got all the settings wrong, I don't know why, but, and we only managed to get a few like 1 second clips, but I still sort of got print screens and images of the badgers here, and it was just, I suppose just these little ones, I suppose I wanted to go back and get them all, and it was just amazing to see them so close up. And when I went on to get more sort of like really fulfilling their natural behaviour, I suppose when I am there, they are a bit timid and shy, but so that was about 3-4 years ago. And since that, I go down to this quite regularly, setting my trail camera up. And so over the past sort of months and years, when I've actually got the settings sort of right, I've managed to film all sorts of great things, which I share my blog with other people, from sort of like the cubs exploring, coming out the set, sort of walking around set, maybe perhaps one of the first times. The adults, so at different times of the year, the adults fighting, rolling around, having a good scratch, and some of that scent, and some of the scent marking as well. And it's quite, some of it's really interesting, some's quite funny, some's really entertaining, and really interesting as well. And so I sort of branched out into different things, and as I sort of got interested in other things, I also started to discover that the countryside isn't this glorious place where nature has its own place to thrive. So I had a first-hand experience of this at the at this set as well. There'd been some disruption, and I looked into it more, and I learned a lot. And I realised instead of in this child's eye of sort of loving and cherishing and appreciating your natural surroundings, it's the complete opposite. And after having lots of childhood memories, years of loving these animals and observing them whenever I could and whenever possible, I suppose it came as a shock to me, because I couldn't understand why this would be the case. Anyway, it made me angry, and as you'll know, when you've got passion, you care for something, it means a lot. It means a lot to you. So after this, I sort of had some sort of mindset that I wanted to sort of have a positive impact, give back, and I knew I could hardly that make a difference, but I wanted to help, and I was optimistic, and I wanted to put my voice out there. But as you all know, just in the UK, never mind elsewhere, where there's a lot of problems and effects that threaten our wildlife, from things like persecution, sport, climate change, declines, extinctions, and it goes on really. But one thing that I did realise that all of these things seem to have in common was the fact that people are, if for them to, this thing to happen and not to participate, so people obviously they're not aware and they don't know how to act, they don't care. To care, you need to know and understand something. So simply they're uneducated and not realising the true importance of the natural world. A factor which made me really realise this was at school. I've just finished year 11, I'm just going to sixth form, and when I'm sort of looking back at primary and secondary education, I realised how I was surrounded by fellow pupils and friends that simply did not have any knowledge or any interest of nature, of wildlife. I had friends that didn't even know what, like, snowdrops and blackbirds were, just really simple things like that. Now, and it seems a bit sort of, that doesn't seem right, but it's just mad. Anyway, so also with not being able to identify something like this, now how are they going to be able to care for nature, never mind speak out and do things when they're older? As well as this, how are they ever going to be able to understand how important it is, and that without it we wouldn't be here? It's scary, and I know full well it wasn't just like this with my school either. I mean, if you look at the statistics, only 1 in 5 children are connected to nature in some way. Now, if you compare this to the State of Nature report, which reported last year 60% of UK wild species are in decline, and then if you compare that again to all these terrifying policies, acts just in the UK that are happening now, being pushed through, or could potentially happen in the future, as much as we are making progress and as much as we're fighting through, the fights won't go away. And in the future, when we could need more support than ever, yet no one's there, it's quite dull, really, I suppose. So what sort of future does this hold? We have problems nowadays, I suppose, with persuading older generations persuading old generations, and they would have been the ones that when they were younger they did go outside when there was sort of nothing to do, and they have some sort of connection there. However, in today's world, when kids sort of younger than me, my age, older as well, they're growing up, and we're surrounded by a lot more distractions, whether that be gadgets, technology, which also have a bad impact on behaviour as well, and all these so-called dangers which are prohibiting and not allowing, parents aren't allowing their children to actually go outside, and as well as this, they're not actually considering it in the first place. So therefore, they're not growing up with any sort of connection at all. And as I said, if you're not going to know about something or connected to something then you simply aren't going to care, and therefore you're not going to know it past that. As I mentioned, luckily for me, I was surrounded by people that were interested and encouraged me when I was sort of growing up, and if I was to have relied on the education system to spike my interest in any way, I wouldn't be doing anything. Throughout my education, so I'm thinking sort of primary school and secondary school now, I've probably had about 5 lessons to do with sort of nature and the environment, and I don't think I've even had one practical, like actually going outside, which is really, really important stuff. So, and it doesn't, well, it doesn't really take much to provoke a young person's interest or a child's interest. I mean, children my age, if you were just to simply explain to them the fact, and they come face to face with the fact that this is our only planet and the one that they're going to spend the rest of their lives on, then they are going to have, it's going to hit them. But so, as I mentioned, schools are a really, I suppose, great place to get children back engaging with nature from this, as this natural so-called push from parents and away from the technology that push is somewhat gone. So school's good, for starters, everybody goes, no matter whatever background, and it's others. But at the moment now, so from my experience as well, there is nothing on in schools really. I mean, some schools are better than others, and there is things introduced, but occasionally these aren't always regular. And in the curriculum, it's only ever included in subjects like biology and geography, and that's only really advised. And it's outdoor lessons that come in even scarce, that are like completely not there at all. However, as mentioned before, every child still has this sort of inner wonder and fascination for the natural world. It's in, I suppose, it's what we originate from. It's in our blood. We go, and I go into schools and do this sort of stuff with kids. I was at a primary school a few weeks just before we broke up, and I was at primary, and we were doing book hunting. That was the activity. And we were doing it with year 2s, and we were sort of rotating over quite a few different years. And I remember one lad, and he was at the start, he was mortified, he couldn't go anywhere, and he was terrified. But by the end, when we sort of showed him what it was all about, and he got involved, and we introduced him to it all, and he started asking questions, and he learned that these were completely harmless. He was all over it, he was just in his element, and he sort of wouldn't leave it alone. So, but again, it worries me that this project, because we went into a school, that was a one-off, and they probably won't get this opportunity sort of again in or out of school, and that's sort of when, I suppose, out of schools are different, comes back in a second. Anyway, another point I'd like to make about this, that being outdoors, this is the hands-on stuff that they do remember. It's the excitement and the thrill, and it's what imprints into their mind, and it's what it takes with them. It's the sort of the feeling they get, and how the interest that they develop there too. So, great schools are a great asset and should be used to make this reconnection. A big reason why I love the idea of National Badger Day, which is a superb idea, and perhaps the students in schools that it's being shown to may be familiar with badger, yes, may be familiar. I've met people sort of like my age, 16, that didn't even know we had badgers in this country, and these kids are watching the video, and they'll probably, they probably haven't. A lot of them probably have never seen a badger alive, and it just gives them the opportunity to realise the animal and be curious after watching this. They're asking questions, they want to know more, and maybe they recognise some people faces off the video, and it just brings it all closer to home, and it makes it really, really important stuff. But then, reflecting back, and something that annoys me about this as well, is the fact that we have organisations like the Countryside Alliance that go into schools, and talk to kids. And I suppose that's just giving a completely different input. And they do projects in school for different things. And it's not what still not the best really. So it's a difficult thing. I like to make myself clear. I quite often get asked, are you sure it's important? Is it important enough for it to be in school? It is. We need to make this reconnection with people and young people, children and young people somewhere. And this is a great start. And another question, I've probably gone on about this already. But why do we need to make this reconnection? I suppose not anywhere really, whether it be schools, out of groups, anything like that. Well, I suppose in years to come, when problems may be more likely to be getting worse or new things are cropping up, who's going to be there sort of coming forward, speaking out, and who's going to have any basic knowledge of how this actually affects them as a person? So next generation is obviously they're the future, and I'm certainly not claiming that all kids need to have full-time like nature education and need to be obsessed with it all, because that's not my point. Even if they're just being taught basic things of what things are, having some connection there, they know what they can do on small scales, and they remember that when they're old, and they're just doing little things that they can do, perhaps and making a bigger impact together. And obviously, hopefully, some will have the opportunity to go on and take professions in, so science, conservation, and so on. And making that interest and creating them attachments, like me, and how I grew up and found out about, I suppose, about all like wrong ongoings, and I wanted just sort of how I try and going to schools, wanting to give more young people opportunities, along with the campaigns, having my voice things, and another big thing for me is around my blog, how I got into it quite a lot really, and the way I try again to make people aware of things. And I suppose with my blog as well, it's a good platform. I do get sort of with writing as a young person, I do get other people like that, young people sort of my age and younger, sort of through forums like that. As well as this, social media too, which is brilliant. I share a lot of my stuff through social media, and I like to keep active on there. Sometimes I feel like I'm wasting my time a bit, but when you've got those, on both sides really, you've got a few retweets or you've got a few shares, and then you're reaching people that may not have necessarily had any idea before, and then they might just think about it. And then I suppose it's criticised a lot, when it is bad to a certain extent, because people do get obsessed, but before that, it is sort of something it's something you need to accept, sort of a way of life which is coming through. And I engage with a lot of young people my age who are interested in nature through social media, because I don't just see these people like walking down the street. They're other places. So from groups I've joined in communities, and we meet at these events we have, and we meet at things like this, and we're all sort of and these are all the sort of people that are sort of really prominent, really sort of going ahead with what they do. So I've gone about schools a lot. What else? So engaging with young people, it is, I suppose, it's very difficult because it's something that's not classed as cool anymore. It's something that's not classed. It's something that's interesting. But when did this idea of having some sort of interest in nature become uncool, as so it there? So I suppose the definition of that is basically keeping up to date with something. But the idea of being interested, or having some sort of devotion to it, isn't something that sort of went overnight. It's something that's slowly slipping away. why? Is it gadgets? Is it due to this understanding, this disconnection that slowly is getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Or I suppose is it the parents, again, parents not encouraging young people, their kids, not obviously not. There's meet a lot of great parents is really that understand. I suppose it's some of that as well. But I suppose it shouldn't really be something that we phase through. We phase through, but something that's already there, and it's something that's it's something that's always something there. So it's always different compared to a majority of young people as well. My age, for me, I mean, in classes, I suppose through school, sort of because I was sort of it was classed sort of a bit odd, but to some extent, it's not really within young people nowadays. I just show that it's something that's not really accepted. But having like a side interest in like keeping healthy or keeping fit is something that is, and but that's what that helps us live. It helps us, and so does nature. So how are we supposed to get this through? So and it's not just going back to younger kids as well. I think most of it starts when children are younger, and that's about persuading their parents. But some sort of plea isn't the answer either. Well, I suppose to some extent we do sort of need to, but it should be considered as something that persuades through action and just getting on with it, doing activities, being enticing, and feeling part of it. Feeling part of something is a good way to start. One example, I suppose a couple of things that I see in a magazine for young people, and there's always articles or things run by young people for the young people, and they write for something, art, photography, and it just makes them feel a sense that they're a part of something, like a little community, a group, they're normal, they've got, and it's weird that we have to sort of extend it to this level, and they achieve, they're achieving something by doing it. Then about celebrating what they're doing, and so they are needed and helping to make a difference. So I've mentioned sort of. So as I say, there is young people out there, obviously, which have an interest. There are some more than others, and I know a whole bunch that are sort of shouting and celebrating through social media, communities, groups, meetups, tagging. Sometimes I see things tagging us as like some sort of youth movement from all sorts of backgrounds. But there is still quite a few of us, and we're sort of the ones that keep in touch and try and do projects. And yeah, these are the sort of type. There are open-minded and understanding. So there is a bit of hope there. There is something there, but still, I don't think there's enough. And not that I'm being biased either. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed the weekend. I thoroughly enjoy these sort of events. They're interesting. I learn a lot. They're inspiring. And as some may know, I take a lot away, and I'll go and write my blog about it. But there's been a main, I suppose, obviously, there's been a main focus about badgers, the call, and the links to that, and the order when it will sort of all go well. Will sort of be over when something good will happen, and we'll all be relieved. But there's always that worry that it is going to carry on in future years, and carry on with what we've been perhaps seen in the past, and carry on about this getting this fed all this rubbish further into the future too. So for myself, I can't help but worry that in what the picture's going to look like in 30, 40 years' time, what's going to be happening. But not just badgers, other species too. Who is sort of going to be coming to, and who is going to, and how are people going to be having some sort of thing, like the general public as a whole? Is this disconnection just going to carry on getting bigger? And who is going to be those fighting against and just sticking their neck out and doing something? Yeah. That's it.
doubt about it. But what I'd like to do, just before I open it up to the audience, are you optimistic that young people, if they're given the opportunity to stop for a moment and think and be challenged about the natural world, that they will react maybe differently to their parents, they won't make the mistakes of the past, they will be willing to hold politicians and businesses and other things to account, to say that we haven't got much time, we've got to do something different about this planet? Or are you pessimistic that they're in this social media materialistic world where they just want to become footballers or wealthy individuals that go on reality TV and don't really give a damn? Is it somewhere in between?
Yeah, as I said, I'm sort of a bit of both really, but what was I going to say?
When you speak to your friends at school,
yeah, of course.
You know, if I just asked you that question, you went into school and you said, I've done to a conference like this, and your mates have been out to pop concert or something, what would their reaction be?
Well, they know, it depends on, it is different. You've spoken about the media there. You've got, not all kids are the same. Some are more open-minded than others. I've got a friend a couple of months ago when we first became friends, and she watched something on the news and she tried telling me that the Badger call was all good. Oh yeah, that's good, that is. And because she's seen the media, because she'd seen the TV, because of something that she'd seen on the TV, she believed it. And that's the problem. And that is a big, I suppose that's one problem, but that is something different. And then you have got those kids which really don't give a damn at all. They really don't care. They just think, oh, we'll live here and then we'll die. Who cares? And I suppose it's about getting through to them. I read a lot of things about kids and climate change and young people, and they're saying that young people do care about the planet. They are sticking up for issues like climate change. But I suppose it's if they actually realise, if they're given the full picture, and if they're given timescales, and the fact that it could be sort of their children, their grandchildren, their great-great-grandchildren, and so when they come face to face with that, that's when they'll realise, and that's when they'll come to terms with it. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Questions, Georgia? Any other points you want to as well? Yeah, please.
We're at least 2 generations apart. My grandchildren are older than you. When I went through education, O-levels and A-levels, I had ample opportunity to learn about the environment through biology, botany, zoology. What would you change in today's education system to give those sort of opportunities to learn about the environment? Because obviously it's missing from your generation. What would you do in education to give people the opportunity to learn about the environment, whether it be for academic qualifications or not?
Okay, so first of all, I'd go to primary school level, because they're the sort of kids where you can sort of creep in new things onto curriculum. Like it's about the regular lessons. At the moment, the biology and geography, I get told things, biology, obviously biology and geography. It's not. It's there every few terms, and it's not regular. It's there, perhaps you might get it in like year 1, then you don't get anything until like year 5. I mean, how is that ever going to sort of have an impact? You need to start regular lessons and that regular thing. And then, so high school, so my secondary school level, it is a lot more difficult. But I think if we're targeting almost to primary school level and lower like high school level, then they are going to sort of have, it is there to some extent, and they are more considerate and they do understand. Because I mean, I suppose in biology at high school, I've had lessons about the environment, but it's nothing. It's just like something on the board, and we have a few lessons about the ecosystem, and then that's it. I think it's the curriculum. Obviously, going back now, it's the curriculum as a whole that needs to be changed. It's not real life. It's not real life different things that need to be. Yeah.
Joe, do you want to stand up, please? Joe. Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I wanted to say, and then I've got a question. One is that we've noticed at Lancashire that at a certain time of year, our website hits for badgers and kids goes through the roof. And I think that it's related to the curriculum. I think badgers are on the curriculum at certain, I'm not quite sure which age group it is, but it's definitely straight up to
Sorry, listen to
March.
when I've done stuff with kids, they've come back and I've said, oh, we could have completed a project. These are like primary school kids, and I think in somewhere when they are at primary school, there is a little bit when they do about nocturnal animals.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a section there that again, it's just
Yeah, and as well, my kids, I've got a 4-year-old now, and she's just starting school, and they've got all sort of the nature area and everything, so it's not all, you know, it's starting, I think it's starting to come back a little
some
bit,
schools
which is
are better than others, I think there are still a lot, there is still a lot more work that needs to be done, but then some schools, they just literally do nothing at all, and I think when we're coming to a time that more does need to be done, we needs to be stepped.
I think it needs to be kind of embedded and followed all the way through,
it needs to be something sort of.
But the question that I had was, we've got this website, we've got a page with information for kids on, and it's okay, and it's got some stuff for activities and things like that, and I really think that it's getting out and doing stuff that's really important, and we do an element of that, you know, we do go into schools to an extent, but what do you think in terms of technology, what kind of things could we have on our website that would be good, that people can actually do in a classroom because they can't get out? Is there anything that you could think of? I mean, you might not be able to answer now, but that would be something really useful for us.
I suppose lesson plans are always a good thing. I've seen sort of examples of them. So if it's not perhaps with the idea of badges, perhaps maybe they could, I suppose if they were really pushing for it, they could do outside trips. But I suppose things in the classroom can still be good as long as they're not sort of boring whiteboard, read that. You can still do bits of art, cutting out and making things and learning key facts, and it's just what sort of entices them and interests them.
Any other questions? Please.
What you're talking about is really the education system. The national curriculum is not interested in wildlife.
No,
it is quite shocking. Now, I was nursery infant teacher. I taught from 3 up to 11, and we taught through nature. We taught through the seasons. I mean, anybody who taught, prior national curriculum had a nature table, and you took them for walks. You brought things in. You had tadpoles. You had caterpillar, and all these things, and children were very interested. And now they haven't. Now, I go into school today as part of biodiversity in Barnsley, and we introduce children to wildlife, and we help them develop their school grounds for wildlife, and children love it. We take in artefacts, we take in birds' nests and skeletons, all sorts of things, and they absolutely love it, every single one of them. Some of the teachers aren't interested at all. The heads, in 18 schools we go in, I've met 3 heads. They haven't got time. It's not important, it's not in the curriculum. It's the curriculum has to change. That is a major problem. The children love it, they don't have the opportunities. Unless they have it at home, they don't have it.
As you say, as if unless they have it at home, I've spoken a lot about school stuff. There is a big thing, there is some stuff you can do, there is out of school stuff that can be done as well. But again, that's unless it's sort of targeting sort of older kids, it is the parents that you need to try to convince.
It depends on the school. Some schools have really good wildlife areas. And they're fantastic areas in schools that can develop. We put in nest boxes, ponds, wildlife areas, wildflower seeds, and the children, they learn through it. They tell us, that's the best thing we've ever done in school.
I've been told that
exactly.
Times,
now you are wonderful. You are really wonderful, and we need you to go around telling educationists about this, because you're fantastic.
Thank you. Absolutely. Any more questions? Please, stand up, please.
Yes, congratulations, Georgia. It's very refreshing to hear a teenager's point of view. And quite agree with you about the importance of reconnection with nature, but there's more to it than that, in fact. Going back into nature is good for your health.
Exactly.
Lows your pulse. One study showed that a day in the woods is just as good a treatment for depression as any standard medical treatment. In Japan, they call going into the woods forest bathing. So it really is very important. And where I live in Somerset, we do take problem families, problem children, for days in the forest, and the children love it, and it really does calm some of these over-the-top children, and does them a world rather good. In fact, one chap wrote in, he was a drug addict. He said, coming to the woods turned my life around. And this is another aspect of reconnection with nature.
Yeah, I do try. I think that's fun. I go into schools where they've got kids with autism, and I go in and they have a woodland area because it is not as such mainstream. They have more flexibility. They can do more that they want to. So they have a woodland area. They have regular lessons. They go out into the forest. Then I'm told, as you know, these kids are very tense. They also struggle with other mental health issues like depression, anxiety. And I'm told that when they're out there, they can see it sort of draining out of them. They can see the relief on them. And when I go into the schools and I give presentations after sort of filming my trail cameras on the woodland area and showing them sort of what's there when they're not all being a bit noisy, they're just amazed by it and they're so interested. They're sort of, they are sort of wanting to ask questions. They are sort of pointing and realising. And it's just, it's really great to see. You can see how much this benefits them. Yeah.
Sandra, I think you'll be the last if you don't mind, because we're a bit pushed for time.
I just want to say, obviously we're very lucky in Staffordshire because Georgia just dropped into our lap. But I just wanted to ask, really, for Badger Trust and also for Badger Groups, what should we be doing to attract more people like you? If we're successful in attracting them, what should we be doing then to engage them and to keep their interest?
Yeah. Well, I suppose I spoke a lot about schools, which is a good thing, going to schools and sort of doing that. I think that's a nice aspect of it, but you can't always do that. I think doing stuff out of schools is just as important, again, good with parents, all that malarkey. But doing things online, I think, like you were saying about putting things on, putting things onto the website, getting involved with more social media, getting more in, giving these kids opportunities, sort of doing writing, taking photography, doing the art, submitting it to things, and it's just sort of celebrating what they do. It makes them feel like they're part of something, and then it's just something that they can, they want to do more because it's encouraging them. And if they're doing more, again, it's encouraging them, it's inspiring them to keep carrying on.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to have to bring it to close. We're really pushing. Is it quick?
Just one quick.
Go on, please.
Excuse me not standing up.
Okay.
I think most Badger groups at some stage of the game have thought about having a junior section. But immediately you do that, you run into CRB checks,
Yes.
which creates a huge problem.
No, I understand that. It's a good point. It's a good point. Thank you very much. Thank you.